All right, tonight's journey, we're gonna have we'll have a clip. Hopefully, if it all works out, we'll have a clip from Up in Smoke, and we'll have a clip from Old School because it's going to complement the news in a way that I think you'll enjoy the peruse. All right, so let's go to our first media block. We got to learn a little bit about the first New York mayor in history to be indicted on federal charges. Oh, he did some stuff. He did. He let the Turkish embassy open up without having the fire inspection. So he's got to go to jail. But the people that just disobeyed the rules at the FCC, they get raises, right? So they're going to do this thing to Eric Adams, but when it applies to them, it doesn't apply to them. They could do the worse, more egregious version of that. But for Eric Adams, they're going to go after him. Eric Adams has served the New World Order, I mean, in many, many ways, but the overflowing immigration into New York City and the use of taxpayer dollars to pay for hotels and all this extravagant stuff, I think even pushed him beyond the pale. And I guess that takes a lot. So let's get to the first block is going to start out with, I have to scroll back down. FBI field sources stormed Capitol. That's the title. That's not my claim. FBI had people that led people who now are in jail. They were led in by the FBI. So I think maybe they should all just be in there together. If you're going to put them all, dude, put them all in jail then. If you're not going to do that, set them all free, because those are Americans being held as political prisoners in 85% of the cases, right? There are some people that did violence and broke some stuff and hurt some people. Good, punish them. I don't want them hurting people. But the grandmothers and the other people who just showed up for redress of political grievances in a peaceful way, there's no way that you should be incarcerating them in cruel and unusual punishment in this day and age without some pushback. And so this is pushback. It's coming from an FBI report, and we'll check it out, and then we'll go see how they apply such standards of justice to Eric Adams.
Inspector General Horowitz, over the past 3 years, I've questioned FBI Director Wray and Attorney General Merrick Garland about the federal assets, such as confidential human sources that were present on January 6th at the Capitol, and they have continuously stonewalled me. We've got no answers whatsoever about this from them. Now, you announced that you were going to do a review of the DOJ response and preparation, mainly preparation, I think, for January 6th. When did you start that review? When did you announce that review?
We announced it in 2021, but we ended up pausing it because of the ongoing criminal cases consistent with how we perform our work. We reinitiated it last year, and I'm in the process of reviewing a draft of the report.
So 3.5 years ago, it was announced that you'd be doing this review, and we still don't have the review, do we?
No, as I said, the reason is we paused the review because of the ongoing criminal work that would, consistent with our practice, we don't interfere with ongoing criminal investigations.
So, but now that you've restarted it, do you have evidence of the number of confidential human sources that were operating on the Capitol grounds on January 6th?
Our report will include the information in that regard.
Can you tell us today how many there were? Were there more than 100?
I'm not in a position to say that, both because it's in draft form and we have not gone through the classification review. And so I need to be careful on what I say.
So we're 4 years in. The reason to do these reports, I think, is so we don't make this, if there were any mistakes, not to make the same mistakes again, but we are just weeks away from the inauguration. We're 4 years, almost 4 years into this report. When is it going to be released?
It's certainly my hope and expectation, although I don't control this entirely because it has to go through a classification review, but certainly in the next couple of months is my hope.
Do you think, is there any consideration for the election about the release of this report? Would you delay it in order to not release it right before the election?
At this point, given the process that has to play out in terms of classification review and all of that, I'm not making any, I don't have to make any judgment about that. We're still, that still has to go on. Just to give you a sense of it, when I did the Pfizer review,
you're saying it's not even going to be done in time for before the election?
It doesn't, I doubt it would be done in time for the election.
Is it going to be done before the inauguration?
That is certainly my hope. in my
It's your hope.
plan.
We're 4 years into it, and we know what we do know is you're going to expose that there were confidential human sources at the Capitol. Can you tell us today how many went into the Capitol?
I'll have that information in the report. I'm not able to speak to information in there, both because it's in draft and we get a response from the department and the FBI,
Okay.
but also because I don't know yet what's classified and not classified.
So if they broke the law, if they went into the Capitol, which we pretty much know there were confidential human sources who went into the Capitol and right there alongside of everybody else, wouldn't they need to follow DOJ CHS protocols? And do you know if those were followed?
They should follow CHS protocols, and again, we'll include that information in the report.
Do you know how many were reimbursed for travel?
As I sit here, I don't recall the number. But I
Don't
wouldn't
recall, or you won't tell us?
Well, and if I did know it, I wouldn't be in a position to tell you because we still have to go through.
We're 4 years
actual
into this.
accuracy.
You're supposed to be the organization that goes and gets these answers when the FBI and the DOJ stonewall Congress. But I feel like, we're 4 years into this. We're not even going to get this information you're telling us now before the election, and maybe not even before the next inauguration. How would we make any corrections or without that information? I want to move on to something else. We've got FBI's failed investigation of the January 6th pipe bomb. Are you looking into that at all?
We've had discussion, I know, Congressman, about it, and we have followed up, and I can speak to you about that.
I mean, they keep saying it's an ongoing investigation, but they've got no leads, no suspects. They've lost information. They've lost evidence. They can't find evidence. Secret Service deleted all of its texts on January 6th. Steve D'Antuono, the guy in charge of Washington, D.C. field office, says that the cell phone data that could have been used to find the bomber was corrupted. And now we just I found out from another inspector general, and I want to submit this for the record.
Without objection.
Yeah, I asked him, do you have the footage, the video footage, does the FBI have the video footage of the DNC on January 6th? And he tells me when he asked the FBI for the video footage, they don't even have video footage of the DNC that we know was created on January 6th. It's almost as if they don't want to know. Can you rule out that there were any confidential human sources involved in the whole pipe bomb thing on January 6th?
I'd have to go back, Congressman, and refresh myself on what information we've gathered to date on that. I don't know as I sit here.
Okay, that would be a huge revelation.
But I'm happy to come.
I think we should get that and get it public before the election. I yield back.
We are going to bring you now more news, more New York officials calling on Mayor Eric Adams to resign here because of all of this. I want to put this up. You see there from the New York Times that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said Eric Adams should resign as mayor of New York City for the good of the city because she becomes the most prominent Democrat to push for his ouster amid federal corruption investigations involving his administration. So, AOC says this: I do not see how Mayor Adams can continue governing New York City. The flood of resignations and vacancies are threatening government function. Nonstop investigations will make it impossible to recruit and retain a qualified administration. That's just part of her statement there on social media. Linda Schmidt has the new statement. Mayor Eric Adams firing back at AOC here. We have it. Let's take that live here. Let's take that full. This is how Mayor Adams is responding to this, saying for anyone who self-righteously claims people charged with serious crimes should not be in jail, to now say that the second black mayor of New York should resign because of rumors and innuendo without even a single charge being filed is the height of hypocrisy. I am leading this city to protect it from exactly that kind of phony politics. The people of this city elected me to fight for them, and I will stay and fight no matter what. Okay, we are getting some breaking news in right now. This is quite something. Okay, this is coming to us from the New York Times, and this is quite stunning. I had just said in this entire story that we have been covering that no indictments, no charges had yet been filed in all of this scandal going on in New York City, in the mayor's office, City Hall, the NYPD, the New York City Public Schools. The New York Times has it right now that Mayor Eric Adams of New York City was indicted following a federal corruption investigation. That's according to people briefed on the case here. This is breaking right now. This is quite stunning here. We just read out that statement from the mayor firing back at AOC. AOC becoming the first New York member of Congress to call on Adams to resign. There are, though, in Albany, several state lawmakers who have already done just that, calling on Adams to resign. AOC becomes the first U.S. House member from the New York delegation to do just that. Now, Mayor Eric Adams of New York City has been indicted following a federal corruption investigation. Remember, he first came to power as mayor back in 2021 after winning that election there. And so we don't know what that indictment says. This is just from the New York Times. We're going to wait to see if other outlets confirm it, like the Associated Press. We're waiting on sources here at Fox as well to confirm what we just brought to you, as well as Fox 5 there in New York. And we'll wait to see from the mayor's office what their response is to this. And once that indictment, whenever it is unsealed, we'll have to look at what charges Adams is facing here. But that is the news right now. Mayor Eric Adams of New York City facing weeks of mounting pressure with almost everyone in his orbit being swept up into these scandals that have plagued the Big Apple for months. Eric Adams, the mayor, being indicted. We don't know on what just yet here, but that is breaking from the New York Times. Mayor Eric Adams has been indicted on federal criminal charges, according to people with knowledge of the matter that's being reported by the New York Times here. He will be the first mayor in New York City history to be charged while in office. This is quite something here. So the alleged public corruption right now is quite historic there in the Big Apple.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Thursday. Have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Crystal?
Indeed, we do. We got some big breaking news this morning. Mayor Adams of New York City is indicted. Right now, the charges are sealed. We are awaiting them being unsealed, but we still have a lot of details that we can get into on that. Kamala Harris yesterday made a big economic pitch. She gave a big economic speech in Pittsburgh. She also sat for a hard-hitting interview with MSNBC's Stephanie Ruhle. So you have something to say about that, before we jump in?
I was forced to watch the whole thing, forced to suffer through pharma commercials, and I didn't even get anything out of it. So I'm salty. And I went to bed late, so there's too much going on.
Speaking of salty, though,
yeah,
salt tax did come up.
That's right.
So.
But no answer. All right, we'll get to it.
All right, so we'll show you highlights, lowlights, all the lights from that. We're also keeping a close eye on Lebanon. Israel is threatening a ground invasion there, so very serious and significant developments, deeply troubling, of course. We're taking a deep dive this morning into the Senate map, which has some interesting developments on the Democratic side, which races they actually think are the most gettable and which they're kind of giving up on. So we'll get into all of that. We've also got some rare good news. Overdoses are down. Overdose deaths are down significantly. So nobody knows exactly why. There are probably confluence of factors that go into that. So we will discuss. And looking forward to speaking with my friend, journalist Torrey, who has some exclusive details for us about the abuse of Diddy. He's got a new piece up about Cassie in particular, but he also has a personal family member who had a run-in with Diddy that was, to call it a red flag would be a major understatement. So he'll give us all of those details. But before we get to any of that, we also have, for you lovely people, a new discount.
Big announcement happening over here. We've only got, 40-something days until the election. And beat that. The paywall we already have clear here.
Who's going to put this first element came down, everything we know about this indictment of Mayor Adams. This came down late last night, at least late in my book and in your book, Sagar.
It was 9:30. mean, it's late.
That's pretty late. Yeah. So in any case, he has been indicted on federal criminal charges. We have some indications it may be a FARA violation. I'll tell you more about that in just a moment. But officially, the charges are right now sealed. There was also a search by federal agents of Gracie Mansion, that is the residence of Mayor Adams in New York City, this morning early. Unclear specifically what charges or when he will surrender to authorities. Federal prosecutors are expected to announce the details of that indictment on Thursday. So we can put the next element up on the screen, actually, which goes through some of the timeline. I recommend, if you haven't been following the story, go back and watch the interview we did last week with Ross Barkan, breaking down what the hell is going on here, because there has been a long, more than a year buildup to this moment. First of all, you had his phones, Mayor Adams' phones, seized in what appeared to be an investigation. They raided the home of his chief fundraiser. And this particular investigation, it appears to be around the allegation that Mayor Adams took money from Turkish government sources.
Yes.
And then intervened with the fire department as the Turkish government was trying to build a consulate in Midtown Manhattan. And the fire department had safety code concerns. And reportedly, allegedly, Mayor Adams intervened and pushed them to okay the opening of this building in spite of those safety concerns. That is the best that we know about the allegations that he is facing. But in addition to, the focus on him, his administration has been besieged by 4 different federal investigations. Just in the past number of weeks, he's had 4 separate high-level officials resign. He is himself facing calls to resign and was even before it became official that these indictments were coming down. So AOC actually got a little bit ahead of the curve just yesterday. She called for his resignation. He sort of alleged that she was racist for suggesting that. But he will be the first sitting New York City mayor to actually face federal criminal charges. So this is quite significant. This is someone, Sagar, of course, who was once talked about as the future of the Democratic Party. He's a former cop. He won the mayoralty. Of course, all the action in New York City at this point is on the Democratic side. So it was the primary that was the big deal. Pretty crowded primary field. He was against Maya Wiley and another woman who was even further left. Her campaign kind of imploded there at the end. I don't know if you remember. What
was her name? God.
Garcia?
Cynthia? No, Garcia. Yeah, it was
Cynthia Garcia, something like that.
It was something like
my brain.
Sorry, whoever you are.
In any case, I remember the primary quite well. It was a big deal that he won. He ran on this very fund the police thing, and a bunch of centrist Democrats absolutely loved that and thought this guy was the next Democratic superstar. They apparently hadn't dug much into him, both in terms of previous allegations of corruption and also just in terms of basic competence. One thing I've enjoyed about him is some of his really bizarre content that he's produced. Just go and look at, Eric Adams being asked what was the best part of last year in one word, or go and look at the compilations of him saying New York City is the Islamabad of America, New York City is the Kuala Lumpur of America, et cetera, et cetera. But these are very serious allegations and a very serious situation for the city of New York, which, even putting aside the corruption, this is one of the points that Ross Barkan made, it's not like he's done a good job as mayor. So it'd be one thing if you had a corrupt mayor. Many big, American cities do. But he was actually delivering for constituents. Ross pointed out there is not one major initiative that you could point to that has really been a success under Mayor Adams. So there's nothing, so to speak, to sort of offset the clear swirling corruption throughout his administration.
There are some other countries we've learned a little bit about this morning that the mayor is embroiled with. But before we get to that, let's look at his response. Very classic, maybe Trumpian, some might say.
Yeah.
Let's take a listen.
My fellow New Yorkers, it is now my belief that the federal government intends to charge me with crimes. If so, these charges will be entirely false, based on lies. But they would not be surprising. I always knew that if I stood my ground for all of you, that I would be a target. And a target I became. I will fight these injustices with every ounce of my strength and my spirit. If I'm charged, I know I am innocent. I will request an immediate trials so the New Yorkers can hear the truth. I have been facing these lies for months since I began to speak out for all of you and their investigation started. Yet the city has continued to improve. Make no mistake, you elected me to lead this city, and lead it I will. I humbly ask for your prayers and your patience as we see this through. God bless you, and God bless the city of New York. Thank you.
All right, there you go. So Adams is now he's a Republican. He's basically like, because I courageously spoke out against the migrant crisis, that's why they're coming after me. Probably a little bit inconvenient that the investigation probably long predates a lot of at least the migrant situation in the city of New York. As we said, it's not just Turkey. Turkey seems to be the most ironclad one, but there are 6 other nations that they are looking into, and those include Israel, Qatar, China, South Korea, and Uzbekistan, that the mayor's dealings with those 5 countries
he
are also.
Discriminate,
I was going to say, he is an equal opportunity. He's equal opportunity corrupt, allegedly, for the lawyers. And, you know, I almost would have to respect that. Now, as you said, he is the first mayor to be federally indicted while in office. Probably not the first.
I'm sure that Rudy Giuliani was hoping to be the first New York mayor to be federally indicted, but he got disbarred recently, but they didn't catch on to him till after he left office. There's a big, long history. I believe that I mentioned people like Giuliani back in my Project Constellation, my first production that was published on the internet. Giuliani, there's a whole crookedness to New York City, to the mayor's office, to the district attorney's office, to the attorney general's office, to the Southern District of New York. There's a whole lot of many, many decades, might even say centuries of corruption that have grown up layer by layer in New York. So a mayor taking bribes, surprise, surprise, not surprised at all. Them going after their own, like the Democrats are in power, and Eric Adams was one of their guys. That's also interesting. They took not only him, but they went and raided his whole team. It's quite a move. I think it's a move not of strength, but of desperation. And maybe they needed to box Adams in. Maybe he was about to go rogue. Who knows what happens in such situations till we look at it. So was there anything there that was surprising to you, Scott?
I mean, not surprising, but I was just thinking. So who, of course, like I think New York City, like kind of synonymous with like mob tactics, organized crime, that sort of stuff. And who probably is very involved and very comfortable operating in those circles is, one of the biggest real estate developers, because when you're developing real estate, you have to work with them for, contracts and stuff like that. And
are you talking Trump or Larry Silverstein? Which developer?
I'm talking about Trump, dude. Like, is this Trump? Is this a Trump hit squad going after Eric Adams? Maybe, like, I don't know. That's my conspiracy hat on, but it's like, they're like, because he has sway in those worlds. I'm sure Trump is quite revered in those circles, right? So he's like, all right, guys, Eric Adams on the chopping block. I don't know. That was just kind of a funny little thing, but I'm curious. So he's got all these alleged international ties, or like all this corruption with all these foreign countries, and they even mentioned Israel in there. Like, I want to know what's going on with that. Like, can we learn more about that?
Well, as you know, New York City has a 16-mile piece of string that goes around the outside of the city, and they have to maintain that. That's probably why Israel gives him a little money. They're like, we need that string up to operate.
Yep. And then the other stuff is like, his classic lines, like, if I'm charged, I know I'm innocent. I'm sure that, it's just like, I know I'm innocent because I'm charged. I don't know if that's necessarily what he's saying, but it's like, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, he's
and
like,
I could be wrong. It could be wire. It might not be string, but it's around the edge of New York City. And there's a whole set of rules that go with it.
I've heard about that. Yeah, that's kind of funny. So, yeah, it's crazy stuff. Oh, and then the January 6th stuff, like, that would be very inopportune for them to like have some big bombshell blowing wide open the entire narrative of January 6th right before the election. So
yeah, like if Massey knows, because he seems to know, and he's like, I know, and you know, but you won't tell all these people, and you won't tell all these people because it might sway what they decide in November.
Yeah.
So someone might leak that type of stuff. There's too many Americans being held in prison for too long, for too little reason comparatively. Those were mostly peaceful protests that went on January 6th. They weren't even fiery to my remembrance. And the only person who got shot in the head was a veteran who was in a civilian capacity, and they were shot unarmed by someone who was on the other side of a locked door and likely was a coward with poor training.
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
Or someone who was told to murder that person, because there's some other oddities of that footage, just like any of these other things you're not supposed to look into. If you watch that footage, there's a special action team on the steps right there that doesn't seem to be minded. They didn't mind being shot at. And then there's someone who takes cover and changes their costume right behind those guys, which makes me think they work together. And when no one's surprised except the woman who got shot in the head, it makes me think maybe people on both sides of the door knew what was going on. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
a
lot of unanswered questions you're not allowed to talk about, because you might also go to prison.
Exactly. And I heard some coverage on this about pertaining to the pipe bomb issue. That's a very suspicious one too. There's a lot of suggestions that this could be an inside job as well. I can't remember what show it was, but they were talking about how like Kamala, like it came out that she was like in the building right next door where all the pipe bombs were planted, but she doesn't lean into that. Like if they were really trying to campaign on the January 6th narrative, which they do, they're always throwing it on Trump, blaming him, trying to put it all on his doorstep. But you'd think that she'd have the perfect opportunity to play the ultimate victim in the case of being like, I was 100 feet away from a pipe bomb, but she doesn't talk about it. And it's very suspicious that she doesn't talk about it, because
if her handlers handled it and put it there, then that's not someplace you want people digging into, probably.
Yep, exactly. So I thought that was very interesting as well. But it's just very, it would be interesting if this all came out right before the election. Let's get some.
Also, I noticed I say Kamala and you said Kamala. I think it's important for us to remember it's Kamala. Well, the reason that I can remember it now is because the accent is on the first syllable, right? So it's Kamala, like communism, right? We don't say communism, right?
So we don't say communism. We don't say communism.
We don't say communism. So it's Kamala, and I remember that because it's just like communism. There you go.
Okay, that makes sense. Now I won't forget.
And her dad was a Marxist economist.
Yep.
That people don't like to talk about because his name is Donald J. Harris.
I know, that was hilarious.
And when Candace gets to the death certificate for Donald Harris 1 year after the birth of the saint, like it all starts to beg the question: who are these people? Kamala's she didn't get a single vote at the DNC primary. So we have someone that didn't even get a vote from her own party, about to possibly take the stage over our nuclear arsenal and our military and this country's future. And for the other side being so scared of Trump, it's like, he didn't do that the first time he was in. What are you guys scared of? That you're willing to, like, she's not the best candidate for their side. They have people on their side I would consider voting for, but they're not running them in the election. They keep those people far away from the stage. They make too much sense. They're too moderate and like balanced and like humanly connected. They need more sociopathy and psychopathy, and she fits right in with that ilk, coming up with downtown Willie Brown, who got the call the night before 9/11, said, Willie, don't fly to New York. There's danger. We got to keep you in the scam, buddy.
Yep, exactly. I had to drive to an adjacent town, Ashland City, right here near Nashville, and on the main highway out there, there's this big old billboard. It says, vote for democracy, not dictatorship. Vote Democrat, right? And it's like, what we're witnessing right now is like the complete antithesis of democracy, in that, their candidate was never elected in a primary, never got any votes. She's like selected by default, put into place, and then all of the madness that has transpired since, like what we're witnessing, is not democracy. This isn't the person that the people would choose if given all the options, I would assume. But of course, we know who we're dealing with. But at the same time, it's just like that's just gaslighting right there, instead of dictatorship, right? So, because Trump said on day one, he'll be a dictator one day. I'll be a dictator for one day. And now that means that he's going to be a dictator for all time. And we know how that goes down in history, because he's literally.
I'm looking for the new Lincoln Project ad that they have, White Dudes for Harris. Which is pretty hilarious, coming from the Lincoln Project, who used to have a pedo in charge of it. And
I can't even differentiate between the memes about White Dudes for Harris and like the actual White Dudes for Harris stuff.
That's why it's funny, bro.
Yeah, so good.
I was like, is this really Sam Elliott collecting a check, or is this Sam Elliott collecting a check?
Yeah.
right? I don't know. But when he
Not
said
Sam
the F
Elliott.
word,
Are you saying
Yeah.
Sam Elliott's in? Oh,
Sam Elliott, he
just-
talks like this.
Really?
that
Don't
just-
get upset because it's a woman. God damn it. Fuck it. Just do it. That's what, like the whole ad's like that. And so it wasn't tongue in cheek. It's a legit ad from the Lincoln Project. I'm pretty sure.
Yep. Sam Elliott narrates salty ad for Kamala Harris.
He's super salty. He turned into the
Whoa.
character he used to play on Parks and Recreation.
Whoa, dude.
Although, wait, that Parks and Recreation thing, I might have heard that. Someone might have already made that observation. That's not my original observation, but it is true. What'd you find out? What do you got? Are you incredulous?
Are you talking about? Are you talking about?
Well,
I was just looking at an article. I mean, I would love to see this actual ad. I don't have the ad here. But
All right, I'm gonna find it.
Yeah.
There's only parodies when I look it up on YouTube, which is even funnier. That I did Dudes for Kamala ad Lincoln Project, and it's all just memes.
Oh God! Now
So
the
I
one you're
will
looking
find
for is that the Sam Elliott one? Is that the one you're specifically looking
Yeah,
for?
because Crowder
Sam
took the
Elliott
piss
Harris.
out of it, but there's other people that have covered it, so I'll have to find that. It's not in the next block anyway, kids.
Twice a year, I teach a course called Autonomy. It's a 12-week course. It teaches leadership, entrepreneur skills, executive skills, all these types of things that I saw were taken out of our education system in order to make the schooling or indoctrination system that we've all probably went through. And it has served us well enough to be interchangeable cogs in the machine of the globalists. But if we want a homestead, if we want write our own ticket, work from home job, work from anywhere type of situation, they're not exactly handing those out at the end of college. They give you a piece of paper and they're like, good luck. So reality is dropping us off here, but the demands of reality are up here. So I created Autonomy to help people close that gap for themselves so they can level up their skills to the demands of the situations that life is putting in front of us presently. Life's demands of intellect and understanding precision and complexity are ever increasing. The schooling didn't prepare us for it. The media is not going to do anything but reinforce what schooling prepared us for. And so we're going to have to take a leadership position and take steps off the beaten path to kind of blaze our own trail in life. What makes the Grand Theft World podcast unique, invigorating, exciting, and informative? Most other podcasts out there are either doing straight up interviews or they're just covering the daily news. They're covering current events from the day they happened. And that is effective. It's useful. It's a great starting point. And then sometimes these current events change during the week past the first story. So we like to give it a little time. You have to wait till some of the dust settles on these stories in order to give them accurate coverage. And the other thing that's really missing in the media landscape is covering the articles that are coming out every day. That's great. That's necessary. But who's bringing in contextual history so that you can understand what has been going on for decades and decades to lead up to the machinations and actions that we see unfolding today? So what we do here on the podcast is we cover current events. Many of these things are censored, but we wait about a week. As a forensic historian, I focused mainly through my career on the history of globalism and collectivism and things that they call maybe the New World Order. There's a lot of facts to these sort of circumstances, groups, events, activities, working groups that they've had over time. So for Grand Theft World listeners, we not only break down the current events, most of which that are censored during the week, we provide you with contextual history, we give you the source notes, the references, we do deep dives, and this really empowers you with an understanding of context and history so that you can make more informed decisions in your life. There's also a community, a membership where you guys can actually ask questions and we can get into the show and we can share evidence. And there's a town hall weekly for Grand Theft World for those who listen to it and are interested in covering the stories that we don't get to during a 6-hour show. Listening to it an hour a day, you could easily consume the week's news, but you're going to have substance and meaning and context and understanding. And with that, you can make higher quality decisions in your life. So if you're interested in more quality in your life, go to grandtheftworld.com, click podcast at the top, and we'll see you there. Thank you.
These allegations are false.
This isn't Grand Theft Auto, folks. This isn't a video game.
What are the most surprising things that you discovered once you started pulling on that thread? Who he was connected to, what institutions he was influential over, what events he participated in?
Come on, man. What are we talking about? Come on, man. No.
You don't have to think about it, dude.
I got this quote because you said you didn't know much about Klaus Schwab. I made it my job to, as soon as this happened, I'm like, okay, this guy's their front man. Let me learn about the official history of the World Economic Forum. I got their 40-year history. I got every book that Klaus Schwab has written or ghostwritten. I went through those books. This is one of the most interesting passages.
Come on, man. Come